All right, once again, you're welcome to this class. And of course, like I said, and as I've promised, that our next video after the last video is going to be a video on building the lesson notes. So this time around, we want to look at the meaning, the component, and how to prepare an effective lesson note or lesson plan. So, of course, this video is purely designed for teachers in training who want to build a strong foundation in lesson planning, classroom instruction. So, of course, we are going to break down what a lesson note is truly all about, its purpose, its structure, an essential element that make teaching more organized, intentional, and effective. So, in this video, you really know the meanings of lesson notes and why it is critical tools for every professional teacher. Because a lot of misconception, is it necessary for a teacher to go into class with lesson notes? Why is it important to prepare a lesson note before you go into class as a teacher? So this video is going to tell you why it is crucial for every professional teacher to prepare a lesson note. Of course, we'll also be looking at the component of a well-prepared lesson plan, including the learning objective, the content, the instructional strategies, the teaching materials, the learners' activities, and evaluation. We'll look at what all this is all about. And of course, we'll also look at how to prepare an effective lesson plan, the step-by-step, the using practical examples, and then clear. There are some concepts or there are some items under lesson plan that some people really see that, oh, is this important? And there's a lot of misconception around that. So we are going to look at the educational principle that guide lesson planning and ensure the yeah, sorry for the break in transmission. I don't know if you hear me very well. For those people that are online with me, can you just type yes in the comments section? Can you type yes in the comment section if you can hear me clearly? If you can hear me clearly, can you type yes in the comment section? If you can hear me clearly, thank you very much. Sunday, thank you very much. Like I said, I don't know. The network is not really stable, but I know it is okay now. But what I'm trying to say is that this content or this video is actually talking about understanding the lesson notes. It simply we are going to be looking at the meaning, the component, and how to prepare an effective lesson note. So, of course, this video is designed for teachers in training, those teachers at College of Education, at University of Education, those at conventional university and Faculty of Education. So it's just for us to see how to build a strong foundation in lesson planning and classroom instruction. So this section will break down what a lesson notice truly is, its purpose, structure, and the essential element that make teaching more organized, intentional, and effective. So what do you tend to learn at the end of the video? We'll be talking about the meaning of lesson notes. We'll talk about why is it critical tools for professional teacher. There's a lot of fallacy, a lot of misconception that teachers don't need lesson plan. They don't need lesson notes. Once you master your content and you know what to do, you can go into the class. Like I said, a lesson note is very crucial for every professional teacher because it's your guide. That is what is going to guide you to know what to do in the class. So we also learn the key component of a well-shared lesson plan, including the learning objective, the content, the instructional strategies, the teaching materials, the learners' activities, and evaluation. We also look at how to prepare an effective lesson plan, the step-by-step, then using the practical example because we are going to lay our hands on some examples on what to do. So we also look at the educational principles that guide lesson plan and ensure meaningful learning outcome of it. So whether you are preparing for teaching practice or you are just entering the classroom for the first time, for those of us that did not go to University of Education or that passed through the pedagogical way of teaching, this class is actually for you, and it is strengthening your instructional skill, and it will also help you to understand how to plan lesson that promotes active learning and measurable progress. So we'll just quickly move into the class, like I said, and look at what we mean by lesson note. Of course, a lesson note is a written plan prepared by the teacher that outline what to be taught, how it will be taught, and how learning will be assessed within a specific period. It contains learning objective, the content, instructional strategies, materials, evaluation, and activities that guide the teaching learning process. So in that wise, for a teacher, a lesson note is a structured guide for classroom instruction. It's also a breakdown of curriculum and scheme of work into a teachable unit. It's a professional record that's going to show your preparedness and competency. It's a tool for reflective teaching and improvement. Why did you, as a teacher, need to write a lesson note? I'm going to give you 5 reasons why you must write a lesson note as a teacher. Number 1, it's going to ensure a proper planning for you as a teacher. So for teaching to be, teaching becomes intentional, not accidental or spontaneous. So it is proper for you as a teacher to prepare a lesson plan. It is also important because it guides the teacher's action during the lesson. It tells the teacher what to introduce, what you are to explain, when you are to demonstrate, and when you are to assess your student. So number 3 is that it aligns instruction with curriculum standard. So teachers stay within the national and the school academic expectation. So because it is from the curriculum you draw your scheme of work, and it is your scheme of work that you are going to use to plan your lesson plan. So it aligns instruction with curriculum standard. Number 4 is that it supports effective time management. Most of in Nigerian context, our lesson plan is always planned for 40 minutes. So if you don't plan it very well, you may likely not be able to know how to manage that 40 minutes. So it is the lesson notes that will support effective time management for you. So the 5th one is that it enhances confidence and classroom control. It's going to prepare teacher to deliver a clearer and a more engaging lesson. Number 6 is that it allows supervisor to assess teaching competency. You have supervisors in all our school, and of course those that are on teaching practice. If you don't have lesson plan, there won't be something that a supervisor will come around to what? To supervise. So lesson plans or lesson notes are evidence of readiness and professionalism. So the final one is that it supports continuity. If another teacher step in, the record show what you have been taught. So probably maybe you are not around, another person can pick up your lesson note and go into your class and teach that particular class you want to teach. So that is why lesson note is important. So let's quickly look at let's look at some of the components that we have inside lesson notes. And let me put it in that way. Let's look at some of the components that we have inside a lesson note. Because if you are looking at a lesson note, there are some components that are inside a lesson note. So I will quickly run you through some of the components, and I will pick one of the sample of a lesson note developed by the premier and preferred University of Education in Nigeria, and that is Tai Solarin Federal University of Education. So before I end the video, so what are the key components of a lesson note? The first key component of a lesson note is a class. You have to have a class. The class, this identifies the learner's level. This is at a stage where you are going to state the categories of people you want to use the lesson note for, whether they are primary school, primary 1, primary 2, or GSS 1, GSS 2, or SS 1 or SS 2. Or maybe you in your own school, you are using basic 1, or you are using grade 1 or grade 2. So the class is what is that talking about. The next one is subject. And subject, it has to do with the general subject for the lesson. What is the subject? Is the subject going to be in mathematics or English or civic? So the next thing, the next component here is date. So the date is the day that the lesson will be delivered. That is the date. So they want you to put the day when the lesson will be delivered. If the lesson is going to be delivered on today, for instance, now, maybe you want to talk about today now, for instance, you want to talk about Monday, 24th of 2025. So that is the date that will be on the lesson note. So there's also another concept there, duration and time. Some used to take duration and time. They used to misuse them. When we are talking about duration, that is the amount of time allocated for a lesson. In Nigerian context, the normal time we normally use is 40 minutes. So that means your duration, you are expected to put 40 minutes if it is one period. If it is two periods, that means it's going to be 40 plus 40, which is going to be 80 minutes. So there's also time or period. The time or period is quite different. Time is talking about the time allocated on the time. Depends on how the timetable is being planned. In a Nigerian context, we normally, some schools resume by 8 a.m. And if you have to plan for your period, so your time for first period will be between 8 a.m. and 8:40. The second period will be between 8:40 and 9:20. The third period will be between 9:20 and 10 p.m. And some school will tell you that they were going for short break of 10 minutes. So that means your short break will be between 10 a.m. and 10:10. Then they will come back for fourth period. The fourth period will take place between 10:10 and 10:50. While the fifth period will be between 10:50 and 11:30. And they will go for a break, a long break of 30 minutes. So they will come back by 12 noon. When they come back by 12 noon, they will resume for the sixth period. So the sixth period will take place between between 12 noon and 12:40 p.m. And the seventh period will be between 7:40 p.m. and what? And 1:20. And the eighth period, which is the last period, will be between 1:20 p.m. to 2 p.m. And they will jingle the bell for the closing. So those things that I've itemized, those ones are talking about time allocated for the class or period. So there is difference between time and duration. So the next one is topic. When we are talking about topic is the theme or the main ideas of the lesson. For instance, now, those of you in mathematics you want to talk about fraction. Fraction is a topic. And there could also be subtopic. Subtopic under fraction could be a division of fraction or subtraction of fraction. When we go to in the areas of English now, you can be talking about part of speech. You go to maybe you go to biology, you can be talking about water purification. All those ones has to do with what? With the topic. Then the next common item there is previous knowledge. Some call it previous knowledge, some call it entry behavior. Whatever you call it, both the previous knowledge and entry behavior simply refer to what the learner already known or can recall that can connect directly to the new lesson. For instance, now in my past video, I've been talking about color. If you are talking about color now, you can say, okay, student can see different colors around. That's an empty behaviors or previous knowledge. You can now ask the student for your first class that, okay, student, how many of you have seen color before? They'll tell you, I've seen color yellow before, I've seen color white before. Then if you are now be talking about categories of color, either into primary color or secondary color, you can now see that they already have a previous knowledge or an empty behaviors they were bringing into the class. So if the topic is addition or fraction, for instance, the previous knowledge might be the learners already know the meanings of fraction and can identify numerator and denominator, because a fraction can be expressed as numerator over denominator. So such statement is your previous knowledge. Now let's go into instructional objective. When we talk about instructional objective, this states whether the teacher intends learners to achieve by the end of the lesson. What the learner tend to achieve by the end of the lesson. That is your instructional objective. They must be clear, measurable, and learner-centered. For example, now, I can say by the end of the lesson, learners should be able to define simple machine. That means I'm talking about simple machine. Identify at least 5 examples of simple machine. Demonstrate how a lever works using classroom material. That is an instructional objective. So the next item there is content. And some people used to mix this up with presentation. There is difference between content and presentation. Content, this section contains the actual knowledge, the skill, the attitude that teachers will teach. It must be detailed, accurate, and directly linked to the objective. So your content should be in line with your behavioral, it should be in line with your instructional objective. If your instructional objective is to define a simple machine, identify at least five examples of simple machine, then your content will come with what? Meaning of simple machine. Then the next content there will be what? Identify 5 examples of simple machine. That is your content. So the next thing I will talk about is instructional material. What is an instructional material? This include all teaching and learning resources that will support understanding in your class. So for example, now I've talked about simple machine. An instructional material you can use can be a picture showing example of a simple machine, or a flashcard showing what? A simple machine. Is that clear now? Or we can say for sciences, you can say a picture showing different types of, or a flashcard showing different types of color. That is in the areas of color. So all the material, the teaching and the learning resources that will support the understanding of the student are what we refer to as instructional material. So once you are done with that, now another item that we normally see inside our lesson plan or lesson notes is presentation, and that is talking about the step by step or procedure. So this is the art of the lesson note. It is the outline. It outlines the step by step activities of a teacher and the learner. Most institutions use 5 steps. Most institutions, they use 5 steps. Some may say they want to use 6. But whatever step you want to use in a presentation, you should focus on introduction, your presentation, your application, your evaluation, and your conclusion. Whatever presentation you want to use. So in details, by the time we get into a samples of the lesson note, I will pick a topic and I will tell you how you can take the step one after the other. So another items in the lesson note is evaluation. This shows how teachers will measure whether the learning objective have been achieved. So evaluation should be linked to the specific objective. Whatever objective, whatever will be your evaluation, should be in line with what you have put in your instructional objective. You can say, the teachers evaluate the lesson by asking the meaning of simple machine, by asking the student to identify 5 simple machine. That is an evaluation. So it shows how the teachers will measure whether the learning objective are being achieved. You put the learning objective there. It is the evaluation that will determine whether you have achieved your learning objective, to measure the strength or the weakness of students in that particular topic. For example, what is a lever? Or identify 3 examples of a simple machine. Or in the areas of fraction, you can just give them something. What is half plus half? And they will tell you it is 1. And you can show an example. Just tell them that if you cut an orange into 2, each of it is what? Is half. When you put the half together, it becomes 1. So the next item there is assignment. Many people used to take assignment for evaluation. Don't forget that evaluation shows how the teacher will measure whether the learning objective have been achieved. It's quite different from assignment. Meanwhile, assignment help to reinforce learning and keep learner engaged beyond classroom. What is going to keep the learners engaged beyond classroom is what you refer to as what? Assignment. For example, that if I say, okay, with what I've talked about simple machine, I can say draw and label 5 simple machine found in your home. You can see that it is something they will do in their house. It's not something they will do in the class. So that means when they get to their house, they will go and draw and label a simple machine found in their home. So anything you are giving students as an assignment should be something they can do at their respective home. So then the last thing there is reference text. So for every lesson note, there should be a reference text. You should make a reference to a text. So I'm going to quickly run you through a typical lesson plan that have been devised by the Premier and Preferred University of Education, which is Taicho Lani Federal University of Education, as a guide. So the first thing inside the first part, the lesson plan for the Taicho Lani University of Education is basically divided into 3 parts. The first part is teacher and lesson information. And inside the teachers and lesson information, you talk about the names of teacher. So as a teacher, your name should be on the name on your lesson note, because it's going to help your supervisor to identify the lesson author. You are the author of that lesson note. And that lesson note you design become your intellectual property, because you are the one that use your initiative. So the next one that could be there is matric number, probably your school registration number used for an official document. So the next one is the week. That is the week number during which you are in your school. Basically, there are always 13 weeks in a term. The first week is always for revision, welcome test. Second week, you start a work. Third week, fourth week, fifth week. So in that place now, when they talk about week or TP week, they were actually referring to the week they have in that school, not the week you resume. So the next one is week of the term. So you have to indicate which week the school term is currently in. So you are going to ensure alignment with the school scheme of work, because inside the school scheme of work, there is a particular place there where they have already highlighted how the work will be carried out week by week. So that is what you are expected to put in. Then the classes. So the class, that is where you are teaching, whether GSS 1 or grade 7 or GSS 2 or grade 8, depends on what they were using in the school. So because that is a place that will determine the age level and instructional approach you have to use. So the next one is subject. The next item there is subject. The subject is being taught. Subject being taught. What subject do you want to teach? Is it English? Is it Yoruba? Is it creative art? Is it civic education? Which subject did they give you to teach in that school? So it's the one that will determine the content structure. So the next one is topic. The topic, that is the broad content theme for the lesson, e.g. that fraction that I mentioned, e.g. the color that I mentioned, e.g. the part of speech that I mentioned. So it must align with the scheme of work. The next one is subtopic. That is the narrow focus. For instance, now you can't teach the whole of fraction for a week. It could be the first week, maybe you'll be talking about fraction as your topic. So your subtopic for day one could be addition of fraction. Day two will be subtraction of fraction. Day three could be multiplication of fraction. Day four could be division of fraction. So it's going to be the guy's lesson depth. So the next item there is the times of lesson. I've talked about the times of lesson there. That is the scheduled period, whether between 8 a.m. and 8:40, which is the first period, or between 1:20 to 2 p.m., which is the eighth period. So that is the time. The duration, of course, I've talked about, is the one that will help you to know the numbers of minutes you have to spend in the class. And generally in Nigerian context is 40 minutes for upper class. For lower class, it will be 35 minutes in Nigerian context. So it's going to help you pacing or sequencing your time. The next one is date. So when the lesson will be delivered. So the second part of the lesson plan is the pre-instruction component. Pre-instruction component. And inside the pre-instruction component, there is what we call entry behavior. Entry behavior, that is what students already know that link to the new lesson you are about to take them. Is based on prior knowledge. It is not an assumption. And that is why most people, when they want to write their lesson, they will put students have been familiar. How do you know they were familiar? No. You can say students have been seen. Students have been taught. If you are sure they have been taught. So that kind of language has to reflect in your entry behavior. The next one, instructional objective. I've talked more on instructional objective. That is the statement of measurable learning outcome. And it should cover the cognitive, which is the knowledge, affective, which is the attitude, the psychomotor, which is doing or manipulation. So it must begin with an action verb. Don't forget about that. Every instructional objective should begin with an action verb. And by the end of the lesson, the student should be able to identify. The student should be able to mention. The student should be able to explain. The student should be able to identify. The student should be able to classify. So the next item there is instructional material. I've talked about the instructional material. That is the teaching aid used to enhance learning. There is something we call improvisation. There are some cases where you may not see the real object, but look for something that you can simulate, a kind of simulation that will look like original for them. Maybe you draw it on a cardboard or you draw it on a flashcard. That is what? That is an instructional material. And for a teacher, it must be available. It must always be available. Instructional material must be. And when you want to talk about your instructional material, it's not that you just say a flashcard. No, tell us how you want to use the flashcard. A flashcard will be used during the class to show different color. You have to tell us what you want to use with your flashcard. Not that you say flashcard, traffic light. What do you want to do with the traffic light? So the next one there is what? Is the references. So that's where you talk about the textbook you are going to use. So the last stage there is talking about the content and the what? And the procedure section. I've talked about the content the other time. Is the main point to be taught. It should match the subtopic. It should match the subtopic. Then the introduction as well. That is the simulated interest. You have to link the entry behavior to the new content and let it involve questioning and demonstration. Your introduction should involve questioning and demonstration. Then thereafter, we move into the step. So the step, like I said, some schools use 5 steps, some use 6 steps. Well, whatever step they are going to talk about, let me quickly touch about the bodies of a lesson using the step. So your step should be guided discovery. It should be around questioning, explanation, demonstration, learner's activity. So, and the last thing there is the evaluation, which is the short question to test if the objective were what? Were achieved. And the last thing there is talking about the assignment. That is the reinforcement task to be completed after the class. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to stop here. And then in our next video, I'm going to pick a topic in a particular subject and tell you what and what should be inside that lesson note for such topic, for such subject. And I'm going to analyze and give reason why I am using that kind of topic. So if you are joining us for the first time, just try to subscribe to this channel. You can also share this video with others that maybe teachers in training or students, teachers in College of Education or at university that are going for teaching practice, or any student in the in College of Education. So thank you and God bless you all.